Okay, welcome to today's Aths TV. Last weekend we did some distance stuff. Today we're going to do some sprints and relays. We've got a panel of 4 here today. I'm Matt Beckenham. I'm the state performance coach here in Canberra. We also have Basil, who was a 2001 4x1 medalist for Australia. Down on the right-hand side, we've got Ben Offereins, who was a 2009 4x4 medalist in Berlin. And last but not least, we have Larcom, who's been national coach of 4x1 and 4x4 for the last probably 6 or 7 years. So welcome all. We've had some interesting questions online from the audience. Primarily, most of the questions been about Ben Offereins' hair, so it's ironic he's got it covered up today. But we'll still probably manage to chat to Benny Offereins about his hair at some point. But I think without further ado, we'll just get into it. The first question we've got to ask is probably start with Larks, but we're looking at what are really the key elements or skills that we should be focusing on as a relay runner through the exchange zone, both as an incoming runner and an outgoing runner?
Yeah, I think the key thing overall is that we maintain as much free distance as possible in general, and that allows for the baton to move through that exchange zone as quick as possible. And in doing that, it takes a little time for the incoming and outgoing runner to practice that to get it right. But if we break it up into 2 halves, the incoming runner, as they're running in, needs to relax its speed, and that's really important that they do that, and that they're gauging really well when to make the call to pass for the outgoing runner to take off. I think that takes a little bit of practice, and it's something that really, really helps with maintaining that free distance in the exchange zone. Developing that awareness to call is really important, and I think that's something that is fun to do in training and easy to practice. And I think passing and calling out loud really helps to get that right. So I think they're the key points of the incoming, and making sure that incoming runner accelerates through the zone really hard. I think if you get those right, incoming, you're halfway there. The outgoing runner, you want to make sure that person takes off on time, number one. And often that person needs to practice that a little, just to make sure that when they watch the tape of the incoming runner, as they hit the tape of that check mark, they take off on time. And when they do that, that again allows for that free distance to be achieved throughout. And I think practicing from a three-point position is really important for that outgoing runner. So getting that right, that 3-point position, and practicing right, super important, and taking off at the right time. Once they've accelerated and the incoming runner is accelerating with outgoing, making sure that free distance is there, which is the outstretched arm of both incoming and outgoing, and passing deep in the zone. So if they can pass deep in that exchange zone, that helps increase that speed of that baton. And I guess the timing is the crucial part to that, getting that right. I think a lot of people can practice it very simply, and we'll talk about that later, but they're sort of the key parts to it, I think, in making sure that acceleration, when you're accelerating out, and that outgoing position is consistent. So yeah, free distance, maintaining baton speed, the key points.
Nice. And Benny, in a 4x4, obviously there's some subtle differences with a 4x4. We aren't always in lanes for all the legs. So what's your advice in terms of relays through 4x4?
Yeah, I guess you got 2 different types. Obviously, that first change, you're within your own environment. There's basically, you can control everything within that. There's no other variables that come into play within the other teams. It's a little bit like the 4x1, where it's a singular change on itself. And that sort of changes a lot once you shift to the next 2 changes, where you're basically taking multiple environments, putting them and overlapping them into one. And it comes to the point where so many different things can happen. So many variables are added to the piece because you've got 7 other teams out there all fighting for that same bit of track. And I guess one of the big things for those 2 changes is awareness. Obviously understanding where you are, where the other runners are, where the incoming runners are if you're an outgoing runner, and obviously the vice versa. If you're an incoming runner, where are your outgoing runners? And the other part of that awareness piece is also understanding pace and speed of the incoming runner, as it is with maybe with 4x1s, it might be a little bit more predictable in terms of the pace that someone's coming in. You see that and you feel that a lot within the training sessions that you do. When it comes to a 400, obviously it's a bit of an unknown, and you won't know until the final stages of that incoming runner's leg how that person's going. They may have gone out slow, which means they're coming home fast. They might have gone out fast, which means they're coming home slow. So you really need to be quite aware and able to pace judge how fast the runner is coming in order to then obviously adjust your takeoff as the outgoing runner. And it's those sorts of things. It enables you to develop skills, and one of the biggest skills of it is thinking on the fly, because so many different things can happen. You need to be able to adjust and make those minor changes depending on what's thrown at you from the other 7 teams or whatever else may be going on.
Yeah, nice.
I think one other point too, which is good, Ben brought up, is when exchanging in 4x1 and 4x4, and particularly in 4x1, having a really good outgoing runner, making sure that they keep their arms stable with their hand at 90 degrees, allows for a really good target. And in Australia right now, male and female teams, we've got some people that are really good at that. And they're able to really keep their arms stiff. So when passing the baton at speed, it's a really nice target. I think that really helps and really allows the incoming runner a nice target to sort of get and to allow the exchange to be with good free distance again. So,
Larks, how important is it for lane discipline?
Yeah, I think it's really important from the point of view of making sure that you're not close to either athlete on either side of the lane. It allows for you to be not worrying about concentrating on reducing your speed as you come into the exchange zone, which can often happen and often does happen at a world level. So I think it allows for you to be in the right position to pass, so that you're only concentrating on that pass and being relaxed at speed. Often that doesn't happen, particularly in the exchange zone, and therein lies problems where people hit each other.
And so, Larks, just to explain that lane discipline as Baz asked. So what we're talking about there is ensuring that the incoming runner doesn't run basically up the back of the outgoing runner. So ensuring that there's only a certain width of a lane, and you have to fit in between both those lanes. And as we all know, that the priority is the speed of the baton with all relays. And so that's what we're talking about with lane discipline.
Probably the main thing too is that when some athletes tend to accelerate early, the incoming runner can get really stressed, and it can cause them to want to move when they're passing the baton. It's a good point, Matty, because that discipline then is gold. You absolutely have to have it. And that I find in that area there you just talked about, Matt, is where a lot of problems lie when there's congested areas, relay exchanges. So yeah, making sure that free distance and lane discipline occurs and right in that exchange zone, super important.
Yeah.
When you have the opportunity to get the team in camp, how do you go about structuring a relay session? What are you focusing on?
Probably the start of it is we're really preparing as a team. So for me, culturally, the importance of the team in relay, and always making sure that you're identifying it, super important, because these guys are all individual from individual events. So as soon as they get together and we walk to the track and we meet at the track, as soon as we start that, for me, it's a great time to pass the baton together as a team. And that means that everyone's heads are thinking relay session. I still have to prepare individually to get myself ready for the session, but I'm thinking team, and I'm reviewing my other team members to see if they're on point and if they're prepared and up and ready for the session as well. So after that, preparing individually. So we'll often do, it might be a 1 lap pass of a baton, calling loud, changing positions we're in, and then getting together as a group in lines and practicing relay drills for speed, for arm position, identifying awareness, and for the athletes to self-monitor and to coach each other, and to really be able to pick up areas that they need to change their hand position or where they're passing. So I think that self-monitoring and monitoring of each other empowers them a lot. And I think once you've done that, individually preparing for your training session. So the maximum warm-up time that there is for a person in that team is the actual warm-up time, and everyone else then make sure they warm up within that time. We then meet as a group after it, and then we go into relay exchange session. But for those who are, you know, coaches with younger athletes, making sure that part's fun, and that you're making sure the relay training side, the exchange zone part is fun and something that you can practice just in your warm-up by accelerating up to a mark. You pop some tape on the ground through your warm-up, and someone else can take off when they're on that mark. So it's a nice way of just making it a practice aspect to it for the younger athlete, but yeah, not pressurized. For the open senior athlete, international level, obviously that 4x1 exchange time where they're coming in and exchanging, and in the relay exchange session is really important to get right, and to use biomechanical data with it along the way to validate it and give feedback to athletes. I've exchanged this way, this is what it means. Not going overboard with the data, but highlighting it is really important. And I think, so an open training session for international athlete, Australian athlete, may be 4x60 meters. It may not sound like a lot, but it is when you're exchanging at race intensity with a partner. Yeah.
And Ben, how about yourself? How are you structuring your relay sessions around the 4x4?
I guess there's a lot of similarities and consistencies between the 4x1 and the 4x4, especially when you're looking at that cultural point. You know, obviously culture within any relay team is so pivotal and important to try and implement and introduce into the team, and keeping, I guess, a consistency within that, because as it is with any relay, you've got members coming in and out, so you need to make sure it's a culture that is easy to come into and people to adapt to and believe in, and obviously move forward with that. So from there, as Lark said, you know, getting the team together, going through warm-up, certain parts of the warm-up together, it's the same sort of stuff that we'll do for the 4x4s. I guess when it comes to the actual sessions itself, they may not, the actual relay exchange part may not take as long as what it would be for a 4x1. There's a lot of work that the 4x1s need to do with their timing and all that sort of stuff. But with 4x4s, it's about understanding what can happen within some of the changes. And typically some of the things that we'll introduce with the 4x4 changes is there may be organising an incoming runner and outgoing runner, and then we'll throw in different variables within that changeover to try and replicate something that may come up in a major. Because as we said before, that's one of the biggest things within 4x4s, and you've seen it so many times on the international stage where teams get it wrong because something's thrown at them that they weren't expecting. So yes, we can't obviously plan for everything, but if we can try and introduce as many variables to that changeover as possible, then obviously it's going to have them better prepared in terms of a confidence level. Because in the end, as it is with any event, any relay, you want your members going in there with full confidence, and trying to build that within the training is fairly important. And I think there's also a lot of things to be learnt from 4x1. I think 4x4 in the past sometimes has sort of been that one that's considered, it's easy, it's just a simple change, don't really need to work too much, it might be a quick little 5 minutes at the end of a session. But I think you almost need to look at it from the lens of a 4x1 and utilise some of the training techniques that they use and try and implement that and see where we can fit it into a 4x4 training. And part of that is obviously data. You know, Larks is huge on data, and I think data is such an important thing. And as he said, in terms of the junior ranks, you don't want to overcomplicate it. You don't want to get bogged down in that sort of data. In the end, for them, it's about learning the fundamentals. But when you're talking about international stage, you're talking about small amounts of times, and you're trying to improve those things. So data becomes quite pivotal, and we've been introducing the data into the 4x4. Larks was doing it when he was in control of the 4x4s, and he's provided me with that sort of data, and I've been continuing that on. And I think it's such an important piece, and that starts to come into the structure of the training sessions that we have when we are in camp as well.
I think the point about chaos is really important, and I think that going back to 2000 to the Commonwealth Games in 2018, I asked the team 4 weeks out from the race, what were some areas that they'd noticed over the past year that were chaotic and affected their racing or could affect. And they came up with Trey hurt his ankle at the 2017 World Champs pre-race, ended up being able to race, but it was an issue. He was doing a run through, a coach from another country fell into the lane. He hit the person just before the race, hurt his ankle, and he was really stressed pre-race, but was able to adjust and race really well in the race. It's something external but can happen. Some athletes have tight hamstrings, rain comes into it. I know of an athlete once, he was walking into a stadium, an official knew him and called out his name, and that was a factor in him going out to race at Olympic Games, Matty B. So neural fatigue can have an effect, and I think all those factors are really important, and what Benny brought up, super important to make relay fun, but also to mix it up and get someone to not only pass but receive. Pass when you're in 4x1 in 2 to 3 groups together. Create that environment where they call with a different word to call out loud for when they're passing. It just helps to create that environment because it is chaotic, and the more you can practice it, I think better. And it also helps build camaraderie in the culture of we're doing this as a group, as a team. We'll help each other. So good points, Benny.
Can you give us an insight into the processes of how you go about selecting relay legs? Is there any specific data or skill sets that you look at in the selection process?
From 100, the faster they are, the more they help you. So if you've got guys running 0.05 faster, and that's 0.2 overall, it's going to help us run faster in a race. So number one, that really matters. I personally have noticed experience matters a lot in relay, in 4x1. So if we have an experienced athlete, it really can help you. And it really can help you when there's stress and pressure on in the race. Those who are good at running, for younger coaches or athletes, running 200 meters, and they're often good on a curve, or their 200 meter is their main event. Often they'll like to run that 120, that second leg. And often in that first leg, it could be an athlete who really has a really good fast 80 meters, and that's their priority, that they run hundreds, and that's their main sort of event they run in. That's their strength, and often that can be a way you can determine who you pick. I go into a lot of strategies behind which leg we pick. Part of it can be just the fact that some people are good at passing and receiving in that third leg. That second and third leg, you have to be able to receive and pass. If you can't, and it's difficult to do it, it affects the race and the schedule. Some are good at just receiving, so often last leg is right for them. Or a 3-point is difficult, so that first leg can be easier for them. Or there's lots and lots and lots of factors that go into it. A Rowan Browning is an excellent 120 and can maintain speed, so that second leg is often good for him. Jack Hale runs third leg in the men's team, and those two have a good rapport. So that exchange, that second to third pass, they'll often hit 2.76 for their time in the exchange zone, and they did that at comms. So you had that with Paul DeBella, Adam. So there can be relationships that help you decide on who you pick. I think there's lots and lots of factors in 4x1, and I think that you never stop learning about each athlete, because some will want to just be in one leg because it's comfortable. I coached one athlete who couldn't pass with his left hand or receive, found it very difficult. So he'd often not want to run a second leg for that reason. So when he came into the exchange zone in the second exchange, he'd struggle to pass it, and his depth perception wasn't great, so it made it difficult to pass it. So that was a factor that influenced positioning for that person. He ended up learning more, and he's developed more sense. So there's some of the factors in 4x1. Benny?
Ben, do you want to talk about 4x4?
Yeah, so I guess in terms of trying to select the positions that you want to implement for the 4x4, it comes down to a range of different things. And I think first of all is the composition of members you actually have at that point in time, and what sort of shape and form they're in. And then you're comparing that to the other countries as well, and what, I guess, basically where you see yourself in terms of position amongst the other nations. And to go into that a little bit more, if you look at yourself and you can see yourself maybe down the bottom end of the spectrum in terms of a team as a whole, then there's different strategies you can utilize by sticking your fastest in first to get yourself into a good position. Because as we've seen so many times with the relay, is that athletes have the ability to pull themselves a little bit more out of themselves if they're there in a race. They can sit on the back of someone, they can run with them, and next thing you know, they're running splits that may have been and exceeded what sort of form they were currently in. And it's all because they're there in the moment. The crowd's going wild, everything is sort of happening. Where when you flip that around, sometimes it's hard to try and come back into a race in those sort of situations. And flip to that, obviously, if you're in a position where your team's looking pretty good and you reckon you're in with a chance, sometimes you want to set it so it's structured where you might put your first runner who's more process orientated. There's someone who runs a good first leg and they don't really like too many variables coming into it. It's a good way to go and stick them first, and from there trying to pick different people on different legs. And one that's been used in the past is obviously someone who's one of the quickest ones, sticking them on the second leg, making sure that first 100 in the lane gets them into the good position on the back straight to try and avoid the traffic. Because as we've spoken about a few times, the things with 4x4 is the amount of things that can be thrown at you. And as Lark said, chaos. It can be chaos in a 4x4 change. So if you have the ability to be able to structure your team to try and avoid the chaos and be out of that congestion, then you would look at that sort of avenue to try and structure the team that way. But it's one of those things where it comes down to each individual championships and what members you have and what other countries are there and what the form is and all that sort of stuff. So you sort of, I guess it's a way of, in the lead up to majors, and if you're haven't got a major and you haven't selected teams, that sort of stuff, you're basically teaching all the athletes to run every leg. You want athletes to be able to interchange into different positions and not be almost pigeonholed into one, because you never know coming to a major what position you may actually want them what you want them in. So in terms of training, it's always great when coaches are implementing athletes running in lane one, so they get used to that. Getting athletes running, obviously in different lanes, have athletes where obviously taking off where people in front of them, people behind them, so many different things. That's obviously going to help and come together and provide us with relay runners who have that flexibility to be able to go across the whole spectrum of all the different legs.
I think that's good, Benny. I think that was one of the questions from the audience, was relating to what measures there can be in training to be adaptable. And I think you've raised some of that in terms of making sure you train in different lanes, you train around other people, to your ability to still focus on what you have to do. And I think that's the same, like you mentioned it earlier as well, in terms of using other athletes in your training squads to be markers for when you might take off. So you're learning that ability to take off at the right time. And I think that's a really important stuff that's in terms of the development of relay running and a culture within Australia through the junior athletes.
Coaching a young guy at the moment, he's 15 and he really likes relay. And he spoke to me about what distance is good for him to practice to run second leg. And so we looked at 120 being a test, and 120 being a nice test for him. And he's now made that something he's really interested in, aside from 100 and 200. At 120 is his relay test, he calls it. Yeah. And because he wants to run that second leg, and I've discussed how 120 is relevant to that leg. And so it's something you can use as a coach, and it's a relay-based test, if you want to call it that, and it's a nice one to practice.
Perfect.
All right, so obviously athletes want to be selected and compete in an individual event at a majors. Obviously, unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't always work that way. So how is important is it to support the relay program to try and get those same opportunities?
Yeah, well, I think that the culture of relays is an opportunity for all of us as athletes in the sprint world to really try and focus on. There's no doubt that we all have aspirations to run an Olympic final in 100 metres or 400 metres, but we kind of have a stepping stone, which is the relay, where it's an opportunity for 6 people to represent their country. And rather than thinking that it's a second-class option, to me, it's the first option that every athlete in Australia that's a sprinter should be aspiring to do. It should be first point of call, let's make a relay team. Let's try and run for Australia at a major championships and try and make a final. I think if that was our drive and our ambition as a culture and as a country, our relay potential could go through the roof. We've already had so many amazing results as relay teams through the course of the last 20, 30 years. It's a dime and a dozen that make an Olympic final an individual event. But we train hour after hour, and we should be using this opportunity to go, you know what, let's make this relay team. Let's build camaraderie. That's one of the great things about our sport as well. We can make great friendships, go on teams together, and this is a real opportunity to go out into the cauldron together and compete. So you never have to lose your aspiration of being an individual athlete, but it's an amazing stepping stone on the way. And we've got examples all the way through. We've got Kathy Freeman as a 16-year-old. We've got Sally Pearson being picked in relay teams as maybe even 5th or 6th members, but they get this opportunity to go to a major championships without the pressure of running an individual event, and they can go there, see the world, see what this is all about, see whether it's in their psyche to be an international high performance athlete, and then come back and train harder, and then really represent that relay team, be the marquee member of a relay team, and then if they can progress through and become a Kathy and a Sally, look what they all end up being, Olympic champions. They all start in relays.
Your point of view as an athlete in the past, how have you found relays really assisted you personally in your development, your athletic development over your career?
Well, for me, relays was an opportunity to be part of a team environment, and to have the opportunity to be around, you know, other sprinters, elite sprinters in terms of, you know, our national team. And I use that as an opportunity to train with them, and to also get better as an athlete. So, you know, to improve my 100-meter times as well. So I saw the relay program as Matty said, it was an opportunity to look at representing your country on the world stage and getting those opportunities to compete internationally against, you know, a whole heap of athletes, and to be able to be in those races internationally, it made me a better relay runner, and it made me a better individual runner. So I think the opportunities to heavily invest in a relay program, if you're not being selected for an individual event, has massive upside. My own personal experience is that I was fortunate to have been involved in 2 relay teams where, you know, I came away with a bronze medal at the World Championships in 2001, and in 2004 we made an Olympic final. So if I didn't invest in the relay program, and if I didn't train for specifics within my training for my development as a relay runner, I would never have got those opportunities. So as I said before, it's got massive upside to be involved in, and I think you know, Australia's got a lot of talent where we can still continue to have some really great performances on a world stage.
Around the table, let's have our best experience or memory of a relay. I'll go first. 2010. Benny, you won't like this one that much. 2010, 4x4. Ben Offereins was the 5th runner, winning the gold medal and the post-event celebration. One of the best I've ever seen. But I think you were instrumental in the design of that post-event celebration, if I'm not correct. And my second one, which does include you, your leg in the bronze medal in Berlin, unbelievable. So they're my two probably proudest memories of watching Australians run around a track in a 4x4. Baz?
Well, my favourite 4x1 race of all time, relay, was the 1992 Barcelona Olympics. Probably showing my age there, Larco. Was the final of the men's 4x1 where Carl Lewis got the baton in his left hand to right, and broke the world record. He wasn't selected in the individual event. He had some issues going into the Olympic trials, but he came in great shape. But for me, that just stands out, as a wonderful relay moment in the 4x1.
Who you pass the baton to now, Baz?
Larco.
For me, the two that I've been involved in, one would be the 2018 Com Games and the final. So in the final, the guys all did their best, absolute best at that time. And for me, while we definitely wanted to medal and we did it, it showed me that the guys produced on the day the best that they could. And there was a lot of fulfillment in that as well. The second one is the women's 4x4 2016 Olympics heat semi. The Australian team ran 3:25.6 and got into the final, and they all executed their legs as well as they could have on the day. It was almost like extracting best performance right there at that time, and they made the final. So for me, those two that having some involvement in were really ones that I can never forget. Loads and loads of other 4x1. Josh Ross is the one I have to bring up. His last leg, 2012 final, in that relay leg, was just unbelievable. And I've never forgotten it. The way he ran that and in the semi, just absolutely phenomenal. A standout.
No.
Benny.
Bring it home, Benny.
So I'm going to go down a different path. It's not actually ones that I've been involved in. So I'm a big, I love getting on YouTube and watching past athletics. I think one of the biggest things, I think, with today's generation is they're not interested enough in what happened in the past. And I think we can learn so much from the past. And I'm going to choose one that's actually resurfaced recently, the 85 World Cup. The video is doing the rounds at the moment. So if you haven't seen it, honestly, go and watch it. I don't think there is another relay where you could learn more from one event than that one. It just literally threw out everything. From the point of, obviously, people running out of their skin, Bruce Frain, all that sort of stuff, just going absolutely mental, into chaos, absolute chaos in changeovers, down to the fact of the American literally lunging at the line in the whole never give up sort of attitude. There's just so much that comes from that and so much learning. It's just actually entertaining to watch. And the other one, I can't go past the ability to be able to watch the likes of Butch Reynolds, Quincy Watts and Michael Johnson in the one relay team in '93 when they broke the world record. It's like the all-time relay team in one.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks, gang. That's our episode for today. Next week, I know John Turnbull's going to have some discussions on parasports, but really appreciate your time today, and all the best to the athletes and coaches out there, and hopefully we'll see everyone out on the track soon. Thanks, guys.